Hello, BookTube. I've got a bunch of mail to chit-chat about with you today. I've got a bunch of books that I want to show you, but also a premium lineup of periodicals. The first of which did not actually come in the mail, only because I haven't bitten the bullet yet and made out a subscription. There are, here in the United States, 3 major square-bound science fiction and fantasy periodicals. There's Asimov's, there's Analog, and there's the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And I recently subscribed to Analog and Asimov and started getting issues of at least one of them in the mail. We'll see how the other one handles their subscriptions. Maybe that was money wasted. Maybe I will need to remind them that they actually have a record, that I am a subscriber, and that maybe they should start sending me issues. But the one that I didn't do was the third one, fantasy and science fiction, the thickest of them all. And often, in my experience over the years, the weakest of the 3, editorially. I've always mentioned that in any issue of Analog or Asimov's, there will be one short story at least. Not a rule of one. Sometimes it's more than one, but never less than one. One story at least that is that particular kind of short story that just makes your hair stand on end. Just thrills you. Just is thrillingly good. Thrillingly accomplished. Maybe not high literature, not in all cases, but thrillingly good. That is still true. I have been reading Analog and Asimov's for a long time, both of them, and I've never known that not to be true. I've never had an issue where that wasn't true. Whereas there have been issues of fantasy and science fiction where I thought, okay, some of the things in here were interesting, but none of them were that. None of them were just electrifying. And I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't actually go online and just subscribe to this thing. I should. I value them more than well enough to subscribe, and magazines need the commitment of subscription money now more than ever, when people aren't going. A lot of people aren't going to bookstores, and a lot of bookstores aren't open to get these things on newsstands. So I really should do that. In the meantime, my surly houseboy brought me the latest issue of fantasy and science fiction, but I have not read this yet. The only thing that I noticed was the weird editorial choices. Once again, a weird editorial choice. You have a roster out here. You've got Karen Joy Fowler up on top there. She's extremely good, so that makes sense. But there's a list of names here on the cover. And the one that isn't listed is the one they start off the issue with, the great Robert Reed. If you've got a Robert Reed story, if you're a square-bound science fiction journal and you've got a Robert Reed story, you tell people that on the cover. You don't you don't leave it for your reader to discover as a pleasant surprise. But one way or another, I am looking forward to this. I just finished the last issue. These are 2 months at a time, and I just finished the previous one, and nothing in that really jumped out at me. But a lot of them I enjoyed, so this one I will probably enjoy as well, and I will wait patiently. Asimov's and Analog I now subscribe to. One of them got on the ball right away and sent me my first issue. The other one hasn't arrived yet, so we'll see if there's been a communications glitch. And then we have some more periodicals, like, for instance, the New Yorker. I recently started up my subscription to the New Yorker again. They offered me a very reasonable welcome back deal, so I took it. And as you may remember, my first issue of that subscription was a bit on the disappointing side, starting right with the cover, which was hideous. And running a lot throughout the issue. There was a lot of stuff in there that just didn't sit well with me. And then this next issue takes care of that completely, starting with the cover, which is gorgeous. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? That is by Christoph Nyman, and it's called Worcester Street, which is a very picturesque little street that runs through Soho in New York City. I know it well. I know that whole area very, very well. And that is just beautiful. Just beautiful. I believe probably one of the artistic points of this is how empty it is. But I could be wrong about that. But the main thing that I loved about this issue, once again, as like the last issue, there's plenty of great stuff in here. There's a harrowing article about the tip of the iceberg. The article is by Sarah Stillman. It's simply called The Damage. And it's about the immigration world here in the United States under Donald Trump's administration. And it's the tip of the iceberg of what is going to happen. Some of the stories in here, in this story itself, are unbelievably harrowing about what Donald Trump's anti-immigration stormtroopers did outside what they thought was outside the public view, outside the eyes of history. Of course, it's very hard to get outside the eyes of history, so it's all going to come to light. The stuff that they did, the horrors that they enacted on people. When in the course of the story, an immigrant is told that he was barraged with abusive racist language and beaten and slapped around and just routinely abused before he was deported. The story, Stillman in the story makes a point of saying that the Trump administration agencies denied the racist language and didn't comment about the rest of it, or denied the abuse and didn't comment about the racist language. And in a case like this, given what we know already, I believe every word that any of those deportees say. And no matter what they say was done to them, I'm going to believe it over the words of anybody connected with the Trump administration. That as usual, the New Yorker has that kind of vaguely unclassifiable reporting. You can read any one of these stories and see why, the feature magazine of a major newspaper probably wouldn't run it at this length. This is one of the reasons that I've always loved the New Yorker, is that it's so sui generis. You get stuff there that you just won't get anywhere else. But in this issue, as in the last one, the main draw for me was the books coverage, which in this case was superb. Absolutely superb, including mainly 3 things. Jill Lepore does a long, lovingly detailed review of Nicole Perloff's new books, This is the Way They Tell Me the World Ends, about cybersecurity and cyber warfare. I don't know if we've seen it on this channel, but it's really good. And I was overjoyed to see it get long, loving coverage in the New Yorker. That is wonderful. I've often been curious, especially in what Time magazine once referred to as our post-literate age, as to whether or not a long, loving review in the New Yorker actually translates to sales. I don't know if it does or not. But in addition to that, Adam Gopnik does William Fever's second volume in a definitive, his Lives of Lucian Freud, which is just, I reviewed the first volume, and the second volume came out. It's big and masterful. I mean, it doesn't, I might not have talked about it on this channel because Lucian Freud as an artist doesn't do it for me, but even so, he's not one of those modern artists where I will say they're a charlatan. I say that about artists when I look at their so-called art and say, quite literally, I could do that myself. So this is not a triumph of art, this is a triumph of marketing. If I can do it myself, and I'm not a famous artist, then the only difference between us is marketing. And I'm not interested in successful marketing. I have never looked at a painting by Lucian Freud and said that. Obviously, the man has talent. It's just not, it's not my kind of, it's not my taste in artistic talent. I believe, especially when it comes to painting, that your artistic talent should elevate. It should beautify. It should I'm sounding like some sort of a Prussian opera director now, and I don't mean to. It's just, it should ennoble or thrill the aesthetic sense, instead of doing what Lucian Freud does, which is often, seems to me to be, to enhance the grossness and ugliness of the subject. And I know that has a long artistic pedigree, but it's not my type of art. I'm not at all in this case saying that it's bad. It's just here we do get, once you get past whether or not it is actually art, then it can come down to whether or not it appeals to you. And Lucian Freud's art doesn't appeal to me, but it didn't take me more than 50 pages of Fever's first volume to realize that this is the ultimate, the definitive biography of this artist. And the second volume is out now, and I was very happy to see it get reviewed like that. And the third one was Louis Manon does a nice long review of the new Mike Nichols biography, which is, again, Nichols doesn't appeal to me at all as a subject, and yet this is obviously, unquestionably, a major work. So it was tremendous to see. The book coverage in here really did it for me. And it had a beautiful cover, and there weren't any good cartoons, but that's okay. I will still wait on them. This is what I was talking about last time when I mentioned that I'd recently got a big hardcover collection of hundreds and hundreds of New Yorker covers. I mentioned in connection with that hardcover collection that a lot of them were frameable artwork on their own. There weren't magazine covers, yes, but also frameable artwork. This is a perfect example of what I had in mind. I only had to wait a week to get it. So I was pleased with the New Yorker. Another thing that I got in this superb batch of periodicals was the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, which is the still, let's say, still holding on to the title of the greatest English language book journal in the world. This one has, once again, a low page count, and once again, a high amount of concentration on non-books, to the point where I would ordinarily be discouraged, except they will then pull out something extremely scholarly or out of the way and give it a huge amount of space, so I can't really complain. This one, the NB column in the back, features a nice portrait of Wilson. Some of you will have seen his great read-along, Mrs. Dalloway. And this one also had one of the things that I promise not to drag you through the innards of the TLS, but I do often take you to the letters page of the TLS, where there will often be arguments. There isn't one right now of the kind of real dust-kicking argument where a writer's reputation is called into question by a reviewer, or a reviewer's reputation is called into question by a writer, and then they go at it, and their partisans go at it for sometimes weeks or months at a time. There isn't a dust-up like that right now. That happens regularly enough in the TLS letter column so that it's actually worth keeping an eye out for. But there was a letter here. There was a letter here that I want to read you. It's from Swindon, but that doesn't necessarily explain everything. Let me just read it to you so that you'll see what I mean. In a page-long review of a book that raises questions about the differences between animals and us, Ian Ground's failure to mention the word language is remarkable, particularly since he regards meaning-rich communication as something animals share with us. I believe this is in reference to Feline Philosophy by John Gray. They gave a long review to Feline Philosophy. I don't know for sure, I haven't checked, but I believe that's what it's in reference to. The letter goes on. Events, even linguistic events, don't wear their quote-unquote meanings on their sleeves, but need to be interpreted, and those interpretations tend to differ from person to person. We question each other's interpretations in the light of the facts, i.e. observations on which we can agree, and we test the coherence of interpretations where we disagree. This is the practical reality of meaning in our experience, and that reality is simply unimaginable without our discursive behavior, which has no equivalent in animals. The writer concludes, I don't doubt the consciousness of animals, so generous of you. I don't doubt the consciousness of animals, i.e. their responsiveness to sensory stimuli. But I see no reason for thinking that their communication is, in Ian Ground's phrase, meaning-rich. So, in case you weren't counting, that's 2 IEs in one letter. But let's read that one more time. I don't doubt the consciousness of animals, i.e. their responsiveness to sensory stimuli. Meaning, if you prick us, do we not bleed? It means if you punch them, they'll recoil. He's not doubting that. That is consciousness for him, is that they respond to sensory stimuli. If you starve them, they'll probably cry because they don't like being starved. If you whip them or burn them or beat them or cage them or starve them or electrocute them, i.e. their responsiveness to sensory stimuli. But I see no reason for thinking that their communication is, in Ian Ground's phrase, meaning-rich. So, what the author of this letter does is a very typical thing for species bigots. He first defines what he considers meaning-rich language to be, defines it very explicitly in human terms, and then goes on to say that non-humans don't meet those terms. Yes, indeed. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Nothing bigoted about that at all. You set the game, you rig the terms, and then you declare everyone else as not qualifying. Yep, absolutely. I wonder how perceptive, i.e. valuable, that letter writer would be in the midst of a wolf hunt for a sick elk, a straggling elk. Does that writer think that those things happen automatically, i.e. by instinct? Do you think there's no meaning-rich communication going on there? In other words, he could do just as well, just plop him right in there, say nothing of his puny muscles and his inability to withstand the temperatures outside. He would understand what was being done. He would understand. Or is he going to say, no, I wouldn't understand it because there is no complex communication going on in such a circumstance? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So letters like that get my goat. Obviously, not to allude to Dr. Dolittle too much. I mean, remarks like that really get my goat. It's a bit from the Rex Harrison movie of Dr. Dolittle, where Dr. Dolittle was on trial, and Rex Harrison couldn't sing, so he sort of talked his songs, and the song in question is all about how can we treat animals like animals. Animals treat us so very well. And he mentions at one point the stereotypes. We say eating like a hog, when what we mean is eating like a man, don't we? Of course, because animals don't do the kind of gourmand eating that humans do. Dr. Dolittle in that scene goes on, he retails all of the animal-related turns of phrase, and then finishes with saying, remarks like that really get my goat. And in this case, this is true. I read a letter like that, and I immediately want to fire off a response about how utterly heedless the author is, about how much misery has been visited on non-human animals by thinking like that. I'm not denying that these animals are conscious. They seem to be able to respond to sensory stimuli. If you punish them, they certainly recoil in a very satisfying way, but intelligent? Meaning-rich language? Oh, I don't think so. Anyway, I also enjoyed the issue, just so you know. It wasn't just that letter. And then we have the New York Review of Books, continuing a trend of just eye-wateringly ugly covers. I don't know if this is just going to be the way of it now. Maybe somebody's nephew needed employ or whatever, one way or another. The issue is still fantastic. Tons and tons of great stuff in here. I, of course, went through it to see if Steve was blurbed anywhere. I'm not, but that's okay, because there were just tons and tons of great pieces. So, including the lead-off piece by a biographer named Brenda Wineapple, who's a wonderful, good egg, and who does a whole roundup of William Faulkner books. So that was neat to see. But then there were also books. There's also mail in this mail haul, and including the first of which somehow or other got opened off camera. I don't know who did it. I think it was an immigrant caravan. It's from the folks at Yale University Press, and it is so fascinating. I wanted to show it to you. It's called Hernando Cologne's New World of Books, Toward a Cartography of Knowledge. It's by Jose Maria Perez Fernandez and Edward Wilson Lee. And it is about the son of Christopher Columbus. And the authors take the very pleasing conceit at the beginning of the book of saying that just as Columbus wanted to demonstrate that the world is all one, that the world is an embraceable, containable whole. And so his son wanted to do this with a whole bunch of things, including books, including a library, creating a gigantic universal library, a cartography of knowledge, a library that has every book ever printed in every language. And I read this and thought it was just fantastic. It's not free of academic jargon and dry academic passages, but it is so fascinating. Who gives a second thought ever to Christopher Columbus's son? I wonder if it would help to read. Let me read the sheet here. This came out at the end of January. Yale got it to me late, but I'm so glad they did. This engaging book offers the first comprehensive account of the extraordinary projects of Hernando Cologne, son of Christopher Columbus, which culminated in the creation of the greatest library of the Renaissance, with ambitions to be universal, that is, to bring together copies of every book on every subject in every language. The authors situate Cologne's project within the rapidly changing landscape of early modern knowledge, examining the challenges he faced and the solutions he devised. He comes across as an amazingly three-dimensional character in what is, after all, an academic text. You don't expect to encounter characters like that, and nevertheless, he does. What he must have been like to know in person. Shedding new light on the history of libraries and the organization of knowledge, this book will serve as an essential reference text for scholars of the early modern period, as well as anyone interested in the expansion and dissemination of information and knowledge. So I didn't open it on camera, but I liked it very much. I believe, yeah, it's out already. I don't know if this has a price. Academic texts usually don't, because what they have to tell you about price is usually not good. $35. Yeah, this is $35, and it will not be in your bookstore. Of course, it will not be in your bookstore. You will have to order this. But we also have a couple of packages that I will open on camera, so that you don't mob and kill me. Just 2 and no boxes, but that's all right. Let's see what we have here. What is this first one? Okay, this first one is from Greystone Books. I have an advanced copy here, so it's just bland. But you have the cover on the pub sheet. Let me show you this. Seed to Dust. That's what this is going to look like. So what have we got here? Beginning in January and extending for 1 full year, each chapter in this arresting memoir depicts a single month for professional gardener Mark Hamer as he maintains the estate of his mysterious and wealthy employer, affectionately nicknamed Miss Cashmere. Is this a novel? Subtitle is Life, Nature, and a Country Garden. Okay. As Hamer rakes leaves in the fall and mows meadows in the spring, he muses on the unusual names, histories, and folklore of his beloved plants and the natural cycle of growth and death in this vast and intricate garden, which he has come to know so well, and where his employer rarely ventures. He also reflects on the many changes in Miss Cashmere's life since he has worked for her, the death of her husband, and the departure of her children for the stately home where she now lives. Poignant, poetic, and life-affirming, Seed to Dust is a brilliant meditation on work, relationships, and the beauty and brutality of nature. Any garden belongs to everyone who sees it. It is like a book, and everybody who visits it will find different things. And this is by the author of How to Catch a Mole, which I liked a lot, and I think a lot of people, everybody on BookTube who encountered it, I think really liked it. Interesting. Okay, so this comes out in May, and I'm gathering that this is nonfiction. Maybe slightly poeticized nonfiction, but still. Boy, it sounds intriguing. White. Fallen leaves curl as if to fold their fingers in for warmth. Hot breath steams from the rudely opened gobs of pipes in the outside walls of the house, while inside hungry, roaring flames or coiled electric elements nested deep in boilers keep the people safe, away from nature's icy teeth. The outside air is densely filled with crystals that turn into mist so dense I cannot see the nearby church spire through the leafless trees. All is still, still and silent. Okay. I would ordinarily be squealing in sympathy, but this new arrangement in this new version of the old Hyde Cottage has wonderful heating. The old version did not. It was drafty and dank and cold all the time, which was a blessing at the height of summer, because it was distinctly noticeable that you could walk in from a hot outside day and it would be wonderfully cool, even in the middle of the afternoon. But all the rest of the time, it was nothing to write home about. Who knows what this? You'll probably be hearing me sing a different tune at the height of summer, but right now, the arrangement here, oh my, delightful, just delightful. Okay, so this is a meditative memoir, is what the pub sheet refers to it as. And I am now intrigued. I am now eager. It doesn't come out until May, so I probably won't be getting to it anytime soon. But only because I've got planes stacked up on the runway, not because I don't want to read it. Then we'll do this last one, and then we'll be done here. What is this last one? Oh, okay. We've already seen this. This is the finished copy. Loaded with blurbs. Good Lord, just loaded with them. How good for the author. Okay, great. So this comes out in February, I believe. Yeah, this is late February. This is by Jed Rakoff, and it is Why the Innocent Plead Guilty and the Guilty Go Free, and Other Paradoxes of Our Broken Legal System. The advanced copy of this is the finished copy. Not a long thing. Jed Rakoff has served as a U.S. District Judge for the Southern District of New York for more than 2 decades. Before his appointment to the bench, he worked as both a defense lawyer and as a federal prosecutor. His range of depth and experience make him uniquely positioned to diagnose the most acute problems inherent in our justice system, and this is exactly what he does in this urgent forthcoming book. He begins his book with an investigation into the first question of his title, showing readers how mandatory minimum sentencing, the prevalence of plea bargains, the outsized power of prosecutors, and the dearth of jury trials all result in the phenomenon of defendants pleading guilty even when they know they are innocent. One particularly shocking statistic cited by the judge more than 300 people whom the Innocence Project has proven were wrongfully convicted, around 10% originally pled guilty to serious crimes they did not commit. And they did that because their lawyers told them to. Told them that as bad as that is, the alternative is worse. From there, Judge Rakoff explores a host of important issues, from the gross racial disparities in the use of the death penalty to the practice of, quote, non-prosecution agreements to address corporate malfeasance, to the ceding of power from the courts to the executive branch, and the frequent unreliability of expert witness testimony. The author is an authority on the intersection of science and the law. He has served on the National Commission of Forensic Science and has co-chaired a committee on the eyewitness testimony for the National Academy of Sciences. So he knows what he's talking about. Well, I've had this advanced copy. I know that it's on my February stack, and I haven't got to it. So this is, once again, a very welcome little nudge to bump this up in the list and don't get lost in the weeds of other things. So I will do that. In fact, I'll do this today. I'll read this today. It's not exactly a massive investment of time. All right, so there we go. Can we do a recap here? We have Why the Innocent Plead Guilty and the Guilty Go Free in February. Then for May, we have Seed to Dust by Mark Hamer, the author of How to Catch a Mole. We have Hernando Cologne's New World of Books, Toward a Cartography of Knowledge. An academic title, obviously academic, slightly specialist history, but done really well, as so many Yale University Press slightly academic history volumes tend to be. It's amazing how readable a lot of these volumes are on subjects that you would think are so abstruse that it's a pair of specialists writing to a bunch of other specialists. Tends not to be the case with Yale. I don't know who they've got doing the editing marvels over there, but they deserve a raise because these things are really good. And then we have a bunch of periodicals. We have the hideous New York Review of Books, full of great stuff. We have the TLS, i.e. the Times Literary Supplement. And we have the New Yorker, with Worcester Street on the cover. Look at that. Look at that. Just lovely. And heavyweight book coverage. Just collectible, keepable book coverage. Hope they keep that up. That's 2 issues in a row where the book coverage has been so great that the rest of the issue need not pull its weight, but it does. And then, not quite male, but fantasy and science fiction. The one square-bound periodical of its kind that I don't subscribe to. And maybe I'm going to, when I shut this video off, maybe I'm going to go and take care of that right now, just so that I save my surly houseboy the shoe leather. So there you go. That was a little miscellaneous books, mail, periodicals, all that sort of thing. I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.